y'all, welcome back to our channel. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to continue on from my pregnancy video. It might take me a few days to get through this, as I have found that this is actually not an easy topic for me to talk about, but I think it's so important for me to share. So if you haven't watched about my twin pregnancy, I'm going to link it up here or down below. Be sure to go and check it out before watching this one. Alright, so first off, if I'm glancing away, it's because I'm kind of reading off of a script. I wanted to make sure I had all the right information before I shared with you. So, here we go. On August 13th, 2020, Jon and I got up at the crack of dawn and we drove over an hour to the city that had the hospital that we were supposed to be delivering at. We were delivering there because I was only 35 weeks. The babies were in breached and transverse positions, and it was a hospital that had a NICU. However, once we arrived at 7 a.m. and we were sent up to our room, I was all ready to go. They tried to get an IV and they could not start an IV on me, so they told me we would wait till the anesthesiologist got there, and I was supposed to be in for my C-section around 9 o'clock. We, however, were told that an emergency C-section had just come in and we would be unable to have our appointment. So they told us just to hang out for a bit and they would see if they could move things around for us. After that C-section had taken place, they told us that there was no more room in the NICU, which meant we could not deliver because they would need our babies would have been premature and need NICU care. So we were sent home. We were bummed as we were so excited to meet our babies, but we went home, we got white spot, and we awaited word from the doctor to be rescheduled. Finally, a few days later, we got the phone call and were told that we would be delivering on August 16th. At this point, I was over 36 weeks, which meant I could deliver in our hometown hospital. However, they did not have a NICU and we still had a few different things that possibly could need NICU care. Once again, we arrived at the hospital. We were there for 7:30 a.m. We walked in, Jon got his scrubs on, I got my gown on, they started my IV, and the OB did an ultrasound, as they always do, to make sure what's happening. He told me that baby A, the one who's closest to my cervix, was transverse, which means he's lying across like this. And baby B, who is furthest away from my cervix, was breached, so his head was up. None of this really mattered because we were doing a C-section, but he just happened to mention it. So next I knew I was going into the OR. I was getting my spinal tap, and then Jon was brought in. I started shaking, as it's normal under anesthesia to have that reaction, and about 12 different nurses, doctors, and even my midwife all came in for the big event. Within minutes, I could hear my babies crying. Baby A had been born at 8:42 a.m. The doctor had made a comment that he had just delivered the breech baby first. Now, I was confused. Jon and I had named them in utero. We knew who baby A was and baby B was, and he just told me he delivered baby B first. Then, at 8:45, our next baby was born. At this point, I was very confused on which baby was getting which name, which it's very hard to make a decision when your body is literally shaking. What I didn't know was also happening is I was losing quite a bit of blood, and they had nicked a vein and then didn't like the way that he had sutured it and had to do it again. Then Jon went and cut both boys' umbilical cords. We didn't know which baby was which. We decided that the baby who was born first, the new baby A, would be Avery and the second would be Ezra, as I really liked the way that sounded. After Jon had cut the cords, they brought Avery over to us, and Jon was able to sit and hold him beside me while I was still being stitched up. Ezra had been being worked on for quite a bit, and they decided that they needed to move him to the nursery as he was having a hard time breathing. After that, they took Jon there as well and moved me to recovery. Avery was with me, and I tried to work on nursing and just enjoying the newborn snuggles. However, at this point, I hadn't really seen Ezra, and I didn't really know what was going on. Once in a while, someone would come and update me on what was going on with Ezra, but no one was really telling me what was going on. I knew that he was having issues breathing, and I think part of it was I wasn't fully mentally there, but I didn't really understand what the severity of it was. Jon came and told me that Ezra had a pneumothorax, which occurs when air leaks into, I just want to read this right, hold on. A pneumothorax occurs when air leaks into the space between your lung and chest wall cavity. The air pushes on the outside of the lung and actually collapses the lung. They tried to correct it in the nursery with a bubble CPAP. However, inevitably he needed NICU care. They called the hospitals around our area, and no one was able to take us. So it was decided our best option was to be transferred to BC Children's Hospital, which happens to be on the mainland. Next thing I knew, I was being told that Avery and me would be staying in the hospital overnight and being transferred the next day, and Jon and Ezra would be being flown over as soon as possible. We called our parents, we told everyone what was happening, and it was decided that Jon was going over with Ezra and my mom was going to come and stay with me at the hospital. Before they took Ezra to the helicopter, they stopped in our room, and I was able to see him, for the most part, strapped into his stretcher, ready to go on his helicopter with his dad. Jon and Ezra flew over the Georgia Strait. They landed at the Vancouver International Airport and then took an ambulance to BC Children's, where, when they got there, they started work on him right away. I stayed at the hospital with Avery, knowing I'd go over at some point the next day. I honestly don't really remember very much of the rest of that night, apart from getting updates from Jon. I was so tired and out of it. I had a newborn with me, my other one wasn't there, and I basically was trying to but he wasn't really super interested, and we all were very tired. Once Jon and Ezra had landed, they took an x-ray, and the air pocket and his C2 levels had increased, so they decided to put a tube into Ezra's chest to help drain the air. His CO2 went down overnight to 56%, which is when they were before he had left the island. They kept the CPAP on, and they kept monitoring him. If his CO2 improved, they could take him off the CPAP and leave the tubes in for a little bit to make sure that that air was going out. So at about 6 a.m. the next morning, the nurses came in and they were like, okay, you are going to the hospital with Avery in an ambulance within the next hour. There was so many different things that went through my head. I needed a vehicle over on the mainland, which meant I needed someone to drive our truck over. I needed to get my catheter out. I hadn't been out of bed yet because I wasn't allowed to. And finally I was able to get up. I went pee, and the nurse looks at me and goes, I shouldn't have taken that out yet. And I was like, why? And she was like, you're going on the ferry. What if you have to pee? I was like, I just won't pee. So they loaded me and Avery up. He was on my chest, and we went on a stretcher on the very long trip over to the mainland to the hospital. We changed ambulances 3 times as we hopped across, and finally made it to BC Women's, where I was admitted along with Avery.